what Ronen is mentioning there, Chris, ties directly the ability to be able to prove that you can afford it ties directly with what some of our viewers are saying in terms of how students are given credit without having pay slips. How does that work?
Well, basically, the institution's looking at future potential, because if you are a graduate, your earning potential and your thing is in fact very different to if you've just got a matric. So it's not completely irrational. But I think the more important is to how, when we talk about education as far as student debt is concerned, I think if one were to tie the two together, one needs to actually bring that, the whole thinking about debt to the front part of the brain, as it were. In other words, to actually not having it swimming around in the emotions, the emotional side of the brain, so that it actually is a rational, deliberate decision that you can actually think of it. And that way, it can then enhance thinking rather than actually suppress thinking. And I think that would be a fair way to actually put it, because without that, people then actually do think. There's the emotion, there's the fear, there's all that when one starts finding it going wrong.
Alfred is back on the line. Good morning to you, Alfred, once again. What is your question or your comment?
Yeah, my comment is, when you're a student having credit and maybe like you are not able to pay those credits, it really harms your performance like at school. I was once there, I know, like you cannot perform better at school at all, because like the more you think that you're owing a certain shop, I mean, it really harms you. And then like the more you think like, okay, you're no longer be able gonna take the clothes anymore from those shops. I mean, like it affects you because you used to look good at school. So like since you're in the credit, you're in the debt. I mean, like there's no, you're not gonna look good anymore. I mean, it can even make you to run away from school anyway. Or maybe you can sell the drugs at school. I mean, yeah.
All right, thanks for that. Thanks, Alfred. We do appreciate your call. David, how can we change the mindsets of young people and how they think about money, how they think about finances, how they think about debt?
Yeah, I think that is a key question. How do we change our thinking? So let me just propose. First of all, I think just to be able to understand why is it that we think this way in the first place. Again, if I go back to the picture, if this is the spinal cord and this is the brainstem, this is the survival part of the brain, the reptilian part of the brain, and there's a shell that goes around the outside of that called the emotional system or the limbic system. Layered on top of that is the higher brain, is the right and the left hemisphere and the prefrontal cortex. So if you have sort of that picture, we can start to begin to understand how it is that it functions. The brainstem and the limbic system, the emotional system, develops in the very early years of life, up until about age 5. We learn so much there, we carry so much of our memories and our habits and the things that we have seen and imitated around us before that time. So a lot of the stuff and the way that we think is already pre-programmed. So when we wake up to conscious thinking by the time we're about 9 or 10 or 12, right, and we start to develop that in high school, the conscious thinking is now contradicting what we've learned when we're young.
All right.
So that's number one. So number two is that now how do we start to think differently? First of all, we have to stop thinking about debt and we have to start to think about prosperity.
Okay.
Right? It's a thought. We have the ability in our brains to originate thought. But the more you start to say, I'm in debt and I feel bad and I feel bad, and you start to end up getting the same results because you're originating your thinking. It shows up in your feeling and then moves into your deeds. And guess what happens? When you think that way, then you get more of what you don't want. And what happens is then it feeds into your thinking. I'm in debt and I feel bad and how am I going to do this? And that feeds down into your emotional system and that feeds, so it does this cycle.
That makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
I do have a call on the line. Tembile from Bloemfontein. Good morning to you. What is your question or your comment? Hi, Tembile. Tembile.
Yes, I just think that the problem of student debt should not actually be looked into separately from the broader problem that we have in society, which is actually a cost of lack of financial literacy. I would want to imagine that it's quite important that programs begin to be implemented that focus on actually teaching the broader society about the responsibility of actually acquiring those debts and the repayment term. And because what we are dealing with, you'll find that large population that is indebted are actually those in the previously affected area, which means that it's a problem that we inherited from the past. The majority are the people that have had no access to finance. All of a sudden, we are now what is the term that they are using now, emerging market, where cash begin to be placed in you, and you are very desperate for it without actually understanding what is the terms of repayment. So it's very important that it's a problem that educates people about the responsibilities of acquiring debt and the repayments that actually they are going to be married on.
All right.
To actually get into that. That's, I think, what can be the solution to what challenge that the students are finding.
Thanks, Tembile. We do appreciate it. Tembile touching on something very pertinent there, Chris, looking at financial literacy and how student debt is reflective of a society that is not well educated.
No,
where's this education?
But I think where he is wrong is that he thinks it's just part of a particular sector because of the previous disadvantaged sector, whereas it's actually pervasive across the student thing. And people make mistakes. Sometimes being credit worthy is one of your biggest curses because you take on more credit than what's needed. And when it comes to student debt, one needs to really look at the institutions that actually package it that's appropriate to the student's potential earning profile. And for any debt that you take on now and requires immediate servicing, for instance, is a problem. Because if you don't have the income, right, how are you going to service it? Right, whereas the debt that says, okay, once you've graduated, this is the payment profile that starts to kick in, that makes more sense. So one really does, but sometimes it's a case of, this is what's available right now in front of somebody's nose, and they take it immediately without understanding the reason it's in front of your nose now is because there's high costs and there's inappropriate servicing requirements. That sort of thing, one really does need to look at this very, very carefully.
Ultimately, what we do need is to all be educated to a certain extent on money usage, on credit, and how we can actually alleviate ourselves from it. I'm sure financial institutions offer that level of education, and I believe that our higher institutions of learning should also offer that form of education. But gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but we do appreciate your input. We've been speaking to Ronen, Aire, co-founder of Student Village. We've also been speaking to David Hesketh, a neuroscientist, as well as Chris Hart from Investment Solutions, looking at student debt and how we can really alleviate or work around it, how you can get yourself out of it, and how you can think differently about it. Now, for more information, you can, of course, contact them. The websites are at the bottom of your screen.